Ready or not, summer is coming, and Wayfair's Memorial Day clearance is on now. Right now through May 25th, get up to 70% off everything home at Wayfair. Plus, score amazing doorbuster deals all sale long and surprise flash deals on Memorial Day. We're talking thousands of products at every style and budget. Now is the time to save big on must-haves for your patio, backyard, and beyond. These savings won't last, so don't wait. Shop Wayfair's Memorial Day clearance now through May 25th.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
We have the tech to get food delivered in 15 minutes, but we all have horror stories about buying tickets. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage. Get amazing tickets in just a few taps. Fees are included, so what you see is what you pay. And the Game Time guarantee means authentic tickets at the best price every time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to concerts, sports, comedy, and more with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
Daren, welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
Oh, thank you very much, Marcus. Happy to be here.
Great to have you on the show. You are the CEO of Courts app, which has been explained sometimes as the Expedia for Padel, tennis, and Pickleball. But can you give us a little bit deeper explanation of what is Courts app?
Sure. Yes, a lot of people like to compare us to Expedia or Open Table because what we've essentially created is a marketplace for racket sports. So a consumer is able to come online, search where they're located, search for the sport they'd like to play. As you said, it's tennis, pickleball, padel, squash, racquetball, badminton, and ping pong. So we're really encompassing all racket sports, hence the name Courts app, because those are all played on courts, and really enabling the end user, the player, to access a court anytime, anywhere. We'll also be integrating open play and tournaments and lessons in a pro shop very shortly. But it's a two-sided marketplace, so it's both the players who have access to the courts, but equally as important, if not more important, is the facilities. Over 30 to 40% of courts go unused, and like airline tickets and hotel rooms, it's a perishable commodity. So we're a big believer in getting your courts out there and giving them the best chance to have a consumer and the players access the courts very easily and frequently like they do other online access marketplaces.
And in your role as CEO, what does that encompass?
Everything and then some. Literally, I started the company, just by way of background, predominantly a real estate professional. I've developed quite a few buildings and still own a lot of buildings around the country. But I had the opportunity to buy the Port Washington Tennis Academy 3 years ago. The academy was the first actual tennis academy in the United States. It's where both McEnroe's brothers played, Vitas Gerulaitis, Tracy Austin. It has a great history. I bought it, invested quite a bit of money to refurbish it. It was 17 tennis courts, converted 4 of those tennis courts to 12 pickleball. So now it's 13 tennis, 12 pickleball, and home to literally thousands of kids learning in the John McEnroe Tennis Academy as we rebranded it. But what I found through that and other ventures that I've been involved with pickleball is the technological sophistication and know-how around digital marketing, particularly AI, was not met. The unique nature of the racket sports business, it's probably the most fragmented business I've ever seen. Nobody controls more than 0.5% of the marketplace, if even that high. There's no Walmart, there's no Starbucks, there's no McDonald's. So having the technological know-how and prowess to integrate SEO, SEM, LLM, MCPs, AI is just unheard of, right? These are acronyms that roll off my tongue and most people's, but racket sports, the owners like to be on the court. They like to play. So what we've done is really taken all this technology and brought it to the facilities. So now they could have the same tools as other major companies have to extend their reach. Not only do they have the know-how, but they certainly don't have the budgets, right? It costs a lot of money to build an AI bot, which we built and will be integrating shortly.
Wow. Yeah, and AI is really on everyone's tongue the last couple of years with the ChatGPT and so forth. So you say that plays a big part now at Courts app, AI?
Without a doubt. We look at ourselves as an AI-powered marketplace. So a few things we're doing. We've already completed our integrations with ChatGPT and Claude. So starting in May, you'll be able to go in and just type in, I want a pickleball court near me, and it'll bring up courts in your ChatGPT. right? Something nobody else has done. We are literally the first people in the world to integrate at that level. We're also using AI on the back end to help build our tools and technology. And we've also created an AI bot called Hey Courtney, which we've trademarked, hence the court in Courtney, that you'll be able to talk to Courtney and she'll be your court concierge. She'll find you court. She'll book you court. She'll take your reservation. She can help you with a pro shop. So she will actually be the front desk of these facilities. We can't call 1,000 facilities a week to try to, onboard them to CourtsApp. I'd say 80% of them, the phone goes unanswered. So an unanswered call is an unanswered reservation. Why would you want that ever to happen? So we're really trying to take technology and utilize it for the games we love. The beauty about racket sports is AI is not replacing racket sports. It's kind of self-defeating, right, to have an AI bot play tennis for you, right? You want to get out there, play, get a sweat up. It can make the user experience better to get access to those courts. So we're really stressing that to help grow the game and get people more, on the courts and get them playing.
That's awesome. So I know you have a real estate background. Do you have any also tech background? Because you seem pretty in the weeds with everything here with AI and so forth.
Yeah, I'm pretty deep in the weeds. I actually, through my real estate endeavors in the late 90s, early 2000s, I started a company called Onsite Access. What we did, we pioneered wiring office buildings with fiber optic infrastructure and selling broadband connectivity to the tenants in the building. I was 100% right in my business plan and thesis. The problem was I was about 15 years too early. We were literally going to tenants and saying, we have broadband connectivity, T1, T3, 1.54 megabits of connectivity. And they just were shaking their head and say, well, why do I need that? I get like 3 emails a day. So problem with being in startups, if you're too early, you're really too late because it just takes too long to hang around. Had that company survived, could be worth literally hundreds of billions of dollars because we had fiber optics in 750 buildings, 500 million square feet of real estate in the US. And obviously we know there's an insatiable demand for bandwidth. We were also first to market with server farms, which are now called data centers, but we were too early. You live and learn and go. And I've always, kept my ear to the ground of technology, both of my brothers in the technology field. I'm very visual and very vision reaching when it comes to how to utilize technology to solve a problem. And that's really what I did here. Like I wasn't looking for a job, but I saw this and said, wow, how can I make it better for both the player and the clubs? And that's really, the best of any business model is how they complement each other hand in glove.
Definitely. And a lot of entrepreneurs, that's what they do, right? They see a problem and they want to solve it. So why racket sports?
Because that was the problem I saw, right? I saw it front and center at my facilities and others. My facility in Port Washington, I live about 15 minutes away. So I have hundreds of friends. They knew I opened the facility. On any day, my phone would light up. How do I get a court? How do I get a court? On a rainy day, when our courts were sold out, where else could I play? Where else could I play? And this was just a common, issue. I literally have 6 friends calling 6 different facilities to find a time to play. How does that make sense? Right? But if you want a hotel, you go on Expedia, you go on Kayak, you go on booking.com. You want a restaurant reservation, you go on OpenTable, you want to order food, you go on DoorDash, right? That people are using the aggregator or marketplace model more than 40 to 50% of the time, right? People want convenience and they want search and availability because it shows you proximity and it shows you pricing and it gives you flexibility of where you want to book and when you want to play. And I love racket sports. I play, a ton of tennis, a ton of pickleball, and starting to play some more padel.
That's awesome. I'm a big, I say paddle, but I'm paddle lot here in Sweden as well, especially during COVID. That when I felt it really took off. And pickleball not as big here, but I know that's huge in the US and paddle coming stronger as well.
It's coming. I mean, there's locations opening every day, every week. It's a little bit more costly to get paddle and padel, whichever way you want to call it. To get the courts in, you need more ceiling heights and better column spacing. So it's a little bit more challenging to find indoor facilities. But it's a great sport. And all the sports are great, right? It's better than, sitting there and playing video games, in my opinion. You're getting active and you're playing with other people, right? Golf you can play alone. It's pretty hard to play paddle or tennis alone. You don't lose, but the ball doesn't come back to you as often.
That's true. That's true. We mentioned you were in real estate. So, what are some learnings or difficulties that you encounter when transitioning from real estate into the racket sport industry?
Good question. The biggest challenge was assembling the team. Having been in the real estate business for as long as I've been in it, I knew all the players, right? And real estate's really a function of bringing companies on and not so much individuals, right? So if I want to design a building, I'd go to 3 architects that I knew, and they give me some ideas or designs, and then I pick one, go with that. I needed to have MVP systems designed. I would go to 2 or 3 engineers and get bids and proposals and go from that. When you're building a tech company, originally I outsourced the tech, as a lot of people do, to overseas, but I quickly grew unsatisfied with that and had to build a team internally. So just finding the right people between the right CTO, the right chief marketing officer, who is a co-founder of mine, a woman named Kate Daggett, who is fantastic, then chief operating officer. So building a team of individuals, right, is harder because you got to find the right person at the right time of their career to bring them on to a startup, right? As a startup, you can't afford to pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars, and have, tremendous expense accounts. You have to make some compromises. Whereas in real estate, you go into an architecture firm, they're there to satisfy your business as a business integration element. So those were the biggest challenges, but we got through it. I mean, we have a great team of people. We're about 20 people right now between a strong sales team. So the sales team is out there talking to the real estate facility owners to convince them to come on board, which I wouldn't say it's hard. It's harder to get in touch with the people than it is to convince them. Our success rate's like 80% when we could talk to somebody, but our success rate is about 10 to 15% of getting someone on the phone. And that just shows you how disconnected, no pun intended, the racket sports business is. Other than some places having apps, you make a phone call to get a court time. They don't answer the phone. So the frustration is real and the need is there. But I'd say that was the biggest challenge. It's like I could just snap my finger and assemble a team of real estate professionals by this evening because I just know them and their companies. It's very hard to find the right people at the right time of their careers to join a startup. And then they got to work hard and work smart and integrate, with team culture.
Yeah. Is it also hard to find like skillful people since the sport is fairly new? Maybe it's hard. You don't have that type of experience in a sport that's fairly new.
That's more challenging on the operational side of the club. On the clubs that I'm involved with and own, finding talented people who know pickleball is challenging, right? Tennis has been around 100 years and it's a college sport and people go to college and play and then they want to coach, on the weekends or during the summers. That's easy. I shouldn't say it's easy. It has its challenges. But pickleball, there's no bench, right? It's a new sport. Anyone has been doing it. No one has a 10-year track record in pickleball, very few at least. But with operating courts app, I didn't find that. I mean, maybe the know-how and the nuance of explaining how tech operates inside a racket sports facility is a little bit of a nuance. But finding the tech, once you get the CTO up to speed and our developers up to speed on what the UI interface works with and how it talks to the database and how we integrate with Stripe, we can pretty much figure that out, within a day.
Interesting. So you mentioned before we hit record that you're based in Florida, or at least you're there right now, and that feels like the racket sport mecca of the US, at least. Like it's a lot of racket sports going on there. How is it like in the rest of the country?
It's interesting. I grew up in New York where racket sports is very popular. It's really been a tennis world. Pickleball has come aggressively in the New York area in the last 3 years. There's more indoor pickleball facilities per capita in Suffolk County than there is anywhere else in the country. Yeah, it's astounding. I mean, overbuilt for sure. Padel's coming, but Padel, is costly and real estate's costly in urban markets, the New York tri-state area. There's major markets. There's probably 20 markets we'll really focus on throughout the United States. It's along the East Coast, the Bostons, the New Yorks, the Phillies, the DCs, Charlotte. Then you have Florida, you have the West Palm, Miami, Naples. Naples, we actually just got the National Pickleball Center to be their official guest booking partner. That's another good one. Certain places are hot. Like Naples is very hot for pickleball and cooler for tennis. But then you go through Texas, you have Dallas and Houston area. Austin's hot for pickleball. Then you go up the West Coast, right? You have the natural San Diego, LA, San Fran. I feel like I'm naming more than 20, so maybe we'll expand quickly. But the sports are loved around the country, and the growth since COVID is literally like 50% participation rate across all racket sports is really booming. There's a renaissance, and we talk a lot about AI, and right, what AI is going to do for you, and I use it all the time between Claude, ChatGPT, and in my businesses, it should give you more time, right? So if you have more time, what are you going to do? You're going to either watch Netflix, which isn't obviously healthy, or you get on the court and play. So the counterbalance of AI being pervasive across markets is it should give you more time to do things you love. And people clearly love tennis, pickleball, paddle, and other racket sports. So the dynamic and the intersection of how they work off each other, could be great.
For sure. Something that's talked about a lot is the inactivity of kids these days and random sport, like kids playing after school and moving, and it's more being inside by the computer, playing other types of games. Do you think that your technology can help that to get more kids and more people having easier access to the racket sports?
Absolutely. One thing we're developing is algorithms for dynamic pricing. Right? A lot of tennis facilities or pickleball facilities will say $30 an hour all year round, $50 an hour all year round. Now, like any other business, you have ebbs and flows of the requirements, right? Typically, racket sports are played heavily 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then 4 p.m. to 11 p.m., right? So those are considered the prime time because that's when most people are off work or off school. But we think between getting kids on the courts on the weekends during the day, right, we'll have pricing incentives and dynamic pricing. The pricing should fluctuate, right? And that's part of what we're bringing that technology to the table is we're building these algorithms to enable dynamic pricing for a club. Your price at 12 noon should not be your same price at 6 p.m., right? And even if it was $60 an hour at 6 p.m. and you made it $30 at 12 noon, right? 12 noon, the occupancy utilization is less than 20%. So even if you got $30, you'd rather have 50 cents on the dollar than 0 cents on the dollar. Because as I said earlier, it's a perishable commodity. I think the pricing and that dynamic and bring the sport closer to kids or young adolescents is going to change. Pickleball is really going through a tremendous growth curve with kids under 18. They're really starting to appreciate it. I know in a lot of summer camps they're playing pickleball, and that's the favorite activity. Because kids can get out there, you pick it up, and you're playing right then and there, right? For an 8-year-old to shoot a basketball into a 10-foot high basket, that's a challenge, right? You see a basketball game of 8-year-olds, the score is like 8-5, right? Because how many kids could hit a shot? You play pickleball, the kids are playing in 15 minutes. So I think the adoption of certain sports and the coaching and the mentality is going to really help grow the games.
For sure. And I've said that so many times. So the barriers to entry to sports like paddle and pickleball is so much smaller than golf, for example, because it takes a lot to be okay at golf, while it is pretty fast to be okay at paddle.
Really? See, the funny thing, pickleball, I agree. I think paddle, I think you have to be an athlete for paddle. And you really have to figure out the walls. Especially don't run into them.
Yeah, I haven't played pickleball in all fairness, but I feel like paddle, if you have some type of, ball sense, if that's a word in English, direct translation from Swedish, then I feel like that's fine.
Right. If you think that's fine with paddle, pickleball is like learning to walk.
Mm.
Pickleball to me is like learning to walk. Paddle to me is learning to sprint.
Mm.
I could play both, but I know many people, and I'm not going to say who, can play a great game of pickleball that looks like pickleball, and you put them on the paddle court, and they're chasing the ball, not hitting the ball.
Yeah, I mean, but it says something that the pickleball has become so big, right? Because it's fun, and usually when you're good at something, it's more fun. So for that barrier to be smaller, then it becomes fun faster, and then it just accelerates.
Right. And there's enough people at different levels that the fun can be had amongst a group. I'm a pretty good 4-0 player. Me playing with 3-0 players is not fun for me, and it's not fun for them. But you get 4 3-0 players together, they're having fun. Same way I like to play with 4-0 players. That's fun for me.
Yeah. On courts app, you mentioned you have tennis, which is an established sport, and then you have pickleball and paddle that's a bit more up and coming. Is some learnings that you can draw from the different sports? And do you feel like they compete with each other, or do they complement each other, or how do you see that?
They 100% complement each other. Most racket sport players, like 90% of racket sport players, play 2 or more of the sports, right? I mean, I grew up playing tennis, and now I play tennis, pickleball, paddle. But what we learned, it was pretty interesting. Tennis is the most popular sport still in the United States. And it's definitely the biggest dollar volume because of frequency of play, cost of court, and lessons. Pickleball is the fastest growing and becoming more popular and is probably played more often. But pickleball started as being more a free sport because of all the public courts, or you could just literally get a net. You can't pop up a tennis court net, right? It's too big and too wide. But they make it's BYON, bring your own net. And you see it all over New York City or on driveways throughout the country. You get some chalk, you could build a pickleball court in 15 minutes. So pickleball right now is our number one search sport. Padel, interesting enough, even though it's far behind the utilization of tennis and pickleball, it's harder to know where the courts are. So more people are searching right now for Padel than they are tennis. But that comes back to your point earlier, Marcus. Tennis has been around 100 years. It's more ingrained in the society. If you know where to play, you know where to play. That was a little bit surprising. I thought more people would be playing tennis. We're still getting good usage, but pickleball and Padel are definitely the top 2 by far.
Yeah. When I've spoken with about paddle on this podcast before, specifically in the US, the biggest hurdle have been real estate. And for example, you mentioned New York, there are some clubs there, but that's really dense. And how can you, and also expensive to find real estate. So do you feel like you have a big advantage there when you have been on both sides, so to speak?
It's very hard to have an advantage in New York City real estate unless you have a lot of money, because nobody's giving you a benefit because I have a relationship. But it is hard. Typically, Padel, you want 30-foot ceilings. Tennis, you need 40-foot clearly. But tennis centers have been purposely built, right? Padel and pickleball have been more adaptive use. So you can go into a big box store that used to be a Kmart with 16-foot ceilings and put a pickleball court in as long as you have 30-foot column spacing, right? So column spacing in buildings are typically 25 to 30 feet. They're not 33 feet, which requires for Padel, right? And a 30-foot ceiling is a lot different than a 15-foot ceiling. So the barriers of entry for Padel are that much greater because there just aren't indoor buildings built. So that's why you see a lot of Padel outside still. I don't know the exact number, but I'd say more than 60% of Padel is played outdoors across the country. It's just hard and it's expensive to play indoors. Although indoors is a great experience because of the air conditioning, right? I mean, Miami is booming with Padel, but their utilization goes drastically down over the summer because you can't play after 8 a.m. And the walls fog up, interesting enough, from the humidity. So that's a challenge too.
True. And here in Sweden, where I am, it's the opposite. That if you have outside courts, they can be played for like 2 months in the summer, then people don't want to play in them anymore. So you have to build inside in order to have year round. And then you have all of the extra costs that you mentioned there.
Right. Now, listen, it's finding a balance. In New York, right, the clubs that I play at and that are on courts app, some courts are $300 to $350 an hour. So that's a real number compared to indoor pickleball could be $40 to $50 an hour. Padel in the US has become like almost a luxury brand. It's almost like a Fendi or a Gucci or a higher end player. So there is a significant barrier of entry. That's why when you said you don't see it as a barrier of entry in Sweden, I see it more similar to golf in the US. I think it's as costly as golf is, maybe more costly on an hourly basis. You get on a public course for $20. You're not getting on a Padel court anywhere near that number. It is a little bit luxury brand. And then companies like Reserve, Padel X have done a great job in portraying that value because they're nice. You go in these facilities, they have nice teak, nice carpet, nice lounges. It feels a little bit different than, typical tennis club or pickleball club.
Yeah. So if you look a couple of years ahead, what do you think will define a successful sport facility if we look at racket sports?
I think from a facility standpoint, happy members, high utilization rates, and a reasonable return on investment. If you're going in and spending money to open a club, you want to obviously get a return on investment. I think a lot of people are believing in the hype and they're just opening it up because they think you build it and they will come. And that is definitely not the case. And that's a big reason we started Courts App is it's not build it, they will come like Field of Dreams, right? It's build it and you have to market to them and keep marketing to them because a competitor could open up 5 miles away and take away half of your business. So it's really, from a facility standpoint, getting in front of the consumer, working with them, listening to them, building community. From a Courts App standpoint, I envision us having a few million players. So the 66 racket sport players in the US right now, if we get 4 or 5%, we'll be about 3 million players annually and getting them to use us often. The frequency of utilization for us is similar to DoorDash. DoorDash gets you to eat twice a day. They make a lot more money than if you get twice a week. So that's a good thing. We're not selling BMWs or Toyotas where you're selling cars, once every 3 years. I personally play racket sports 150 to 200 times a year. So a consumer like myself or someone like yourself that plays frequently is who we want. And then we'll be instituting a reward program. So the more you play, just like frequent flyers, frequent players. The more you play, you get benefits. We just signed a deal with Franklin, which is the largest pickleball manufacturer in the US with their X40. And anyone who books a court with us gets a 3-pack of Franklin balls. That's worth $12. So you might as well book the court with us and get a free can of balls and, book it elsewhere. And we're also doing discounting, 10% off your first court. And like I said, play 10 times, get a free court. So we're being innovative to the way that the players want this and are accustomed to this for other uses. It just hasn't existed in racket sports.
No. And the loyalty program, I think, is awesome. Like I used to, if I look to myself, like if you have something from a cafe, then you go there because you know that you get every 5th or whatever 6th drink for free. And then I can rather go there than there. And that's with everything. So I think that's really smart.
Yeah. We're trying to innovate the utilization of technology, but yet complement the things that people are accustomed to day to day. Right? We're not reinventing the wheel. I say this all the time, right? I'm not Elon Musk. I'm not doing SpaceX. I have no interest in colonizing Mars. All I want to do is get players on courts and get courts filled with players, right? So it's a simple thesis. We just enabled the technology to make it happen easier and more seamlessly.
You want to colonize the courts.
There you go, Marcus. I'll phone that. Colonizing the courts would be good. I like that.
You can take that.
I will take that. I will use that. I promise you.
Awesome. After this entrepreneurial journey that you've been on and currently is on, what's some advice with your experience? There are young people listening that might be early in their careers. What are some advice for young people with aspirations to work in the sports industry?
Great question. It's funny. The sports industry is a challenging industry, right? I could tell you firsthand because I have a 25-year-old son that is a sports aficionado, loves sports, cares about sports, but he's great at watching sports, right? Just because you watch sports and you know about your teams doesn't mean sports can be your career. And I see a lot of young people misguided getting into the sports business because they think it's cool or it's fun. But at the end of the day, you're selling. Like my CTO or my developers, they're in a sports business, but they're still in the tech business, right? If they're programming and writing code and they're a full stack developer for DoorDash or Courts App, does it really matter that one's sports or one's food, or if you went to Gucci and it's fashion? So I think you need to be wise and don't get disillusioned that because you like watching sports and you enjoy sports, that you should be in the sports field. I actually think sports management should be banned from colleges because these kids go there with the disillusion. No, I'm telling you, I think there's a disillusion that it's sports management and you just walk in to the Yankees or the Knicks and you get a job. The biggest problem with sports is they don't pay because they know so many people will take the job with no pay, right? So it's like a big problem and it's a big disconnect. But children are naive and they live and learn. A good friend of mine's son was selling season tickets for the New York Islanders, right? And the kid did well, but at the end of the day, he said, "You have nothing to do with the Islanders. You're not playing. You don't even know the players. You're not the general manager building a roster that is more sports. You're selling tickets. So go sell insurance or go sell real estate and make real money if that's what you want, money. But selling tickets is not involved in the sport, right? Selling tech time is not involved in the sport. It's associated, but the same thing as being a sports writer. If you want to write, unfortunately, they don't get paid a lot because there's so many people. Any job that's highly coveted doesn't get paid a lot. So I think you just got to be really careful about thinking about the sports as a career. It's not for the faint-hearted, that's for sure.
For sure. And I agree with you that I think that, being a fan isn't enough. I think that's actually a disadvantage. If you say, for example, in an interview, they don't need fans, they need someone who can bring value. So I agree with that. As a sports management graduate myself, I wouldn't like to ban it, but I understand your point. And I definitely think that a lot of sports right holders take advantage of that, people are so passionate about the sport that they are willing to take like a pay cut for some roles, for sure.
Well, they get pigeonholed. Like, listen, you're a smart, successful guy. You did sports management, right? But there's thousands of these kids who take sports management and they graduate. They don't even get interviews. I mean, listen, there's only 32 NFL teams. How many thousands of insurance companies are there? How many, thousands of restaurant businesses or hotels are there? It's such a narrow field from a professional standpoint that it's hard. And the rollover is just not that great. It's hard from just a pure number standpoint, but it looks cool, right? And it looks fun. I'm a huge sports fan and I go to games, but I know I'm a very good fan and I don't necessarily want to be in that business.
Yeah, true. But I mean, you work with Courts app, so you're in the sports industry somehow anyway, although.
Yeah. I mean, listen, when I attend events and, I go to the US Open or I'm going to the US Open of Pickleball, there is an enjoyment level there. But I gotta tell you, it doesn't alleviate when I play the game, I'm having fun. Don't get me wrong. But when I'm at an event and I got to answer, 100 emails when I got back, or I got to handle payroll, or I got to figure out why, this technology went astray, it doesn't feel like I'm in sports, hitting an overhand slam for sure.
Yeah, I understand that. I like to end on a networking question. So, who from your network do you think will be a good guest on this show?
Tito Machado, the CEO of Duper. Duper is the number one rating platform for pickleball. They represent millions of people. I think he'd be a great person. I think Gordon Kay, Chief Experience Officer at Yola, who's a mentor and friend, would be a great guy in that field. A few other people who are involved in, the large scale pickleball or businesses of that nature. I think those would be helpful. So if you want those introductions, I'm happy to introduce you as well.
Appreciate that. Daren, thank you so much for taking the time to join Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Marcus. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the follow or subscribe button on your podcast app so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com, connect with me on LinkedIn, or follow the podcast on Instagram, X, and Facebook @SportsM Podcast.